It's amazing.
Now I feel like I can't disappoint you folks.
Am I right, though?
Good evening, everyone. We are so thrilled to have you here. You'll have to put up with me for just a few moments, then I'll be turning things over to the main attraction here this evening, and we are thrilled that this evening is going forward. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge McNally Robinson Booksellers is located here in Treaty 1 territory. That's the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, of course, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. We are so pleased that you could join us here, both here in the store and virtually for all you watching at home. Tonight, we are welcoming Donovan Bailey here to the city to celebrate his new book, Undisputed. We should clap wildly. The man himself is walking down the aisle. Now I just have a few very quick notes before we get started, and I realize this is that embarrassing moment where I'm talking while Donovan is standing right beside us, so rest assured I won't take up too much of your time. This is a memoir of Olympic glory. It takes you from his boyhood in Jamaica to the basketball courts of Oakville, and of course to double Olympic gold for Canada in Atlanta, but it doesn't stop there. His story is so much more, and it's told in that incredible, unfiltered, unbelievable way that only Donovan could tell it in. Now, this is one of those events where it feels like, oh, this is a man who needs no introduction, but this is also a reputation and a legacy that deserves to be spoken out loud. So I'll get into that in just a moment. Just a few quick notes. There'll be a conversation here, then there'll be an opportunity for you folks to ask questions. Put up your hand if you have a question. I'll run over to you with this microphone. It's not because we don't think you can project your voice. It just ensures that everyone watching at home can hear your question as well. At the end of the event, we'll ask you to remain in place for just one moment while we safely transport Donovan over to the signing table, and I'll be back with some adrenaline-packed signing notes at exactly that point to let you know how you can get a copy of this incredible book signed. Now, to get on to the main event, we're so pleased to have tonight hosting this event, Ace Burpee, the host on 103.1 Virgin Radio. And of course, our special guest here tonight is Donovan Bailey, one of the world's most dominant sporting players. Field's named him Sprinter of the Decade. He is the first man in history to be world champion, Olympic champion, and world record holder at the same time. He is a two-time Olympic champion, three-time world champion, two-time world record holder. He's also the only person to be inducted into Canada's Sports Hall of Fame twice. In '96, Bailey achieved the fastest top speed recorded to date at 27.07 miles per hour, surpassed only by Usain Bolt. Bailey also broke the indoor 50-meter world record in a time of 5.56 seconds, a record that still stands today. Since retirement in 2001, he has worked as a commentator for CBC, CTV, and Eurosport. He serves as a board advisor for several companies and is involved with and supports many charitable associations. I never thought I'd have the opportunity to say this, but I'm delighted I can. Please join me in welcoming Donovan Bailey.
This is so amazing. Welcome back to Winnipeg. People are so genuinely happy to see you in person and to share this moment with you. So thank you, and myself included.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here and so glad that Winnipeggers love to read books. So I'm very happy to be back. Yes.
It's interesting. So we can go like
go wherever you want to go. Go wherever.
Okay, we will. So I have so many things, so many directions we could go, but it's so interesting because in that lead-in, everyone, when you read this book, you'll get more than a sense of where I'm going with this. But so in your intro, right? Only man to be world champ, right? Same time as world record holder, same time as Olympic champion, right? From reading this and just the way you sort of saw this all going down in your life, okay? Mm-hmm. I would say that because that's shocking, right? Like that
To some, yes.
Yeah, it is. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I feel it wasn't to you.
No, not at all.
Listen to this.
Not at all.
That's what I'm
But it
saying.
wasn't though. It wasn't. I mean, I try to preach things. I think that I mean, and obviously we talk about it throughout the book. I try to preach confidence to kids or to people. I think that it's the number one thing. The number one thing anytime you're doing anything is to kind of manifest what it is that you want it to be. And so I mean, speaking to people from every walk of life. I mean, I'd speak to musicians, journalists, CEOs, whatever, and they're like, man, you know what? Just hearing you speak sometimes, and through track. I mean, they were sports fans at one point, but hearing and understanding kind of like my mindset was kind of what gets me to someplace. So no, I was not surprised.
No, and I find that so amazing and so like, to me, that is fascinating. That like there was a stretch in your career, maybe a 2-year stretch, where I'm gaining from this book, and I would never have known this. I would never have thought this. I would never even think of someone being able to dream this into existence. But it was basically at the point where, no, you'll decide when you set the world record.
Yeah.
Everyone, like, think about that, as in, are we gonna, like, where are we? We're in Switzerland, let's say, at a meet, or we're somewhere else, right? And it's like, do I want to do it today? And it's your call. Like, that is mind-blowing to me. Mind-blowing.
Well, it's the original bet on yourself. And for me, I'm very lucky. And again, I talk about the two people that are my mentors in my life. I'm an unapologetic mama's boy, and that's who I am. And my parents being Jamaican, my father was not my friend. So I'm an unapologetic mama's boy, but my dad is not. My dad is someone that's there to provide structure and discipline, right? So I know that I had the two people in the world that would support me implicitly no matter what I do. So when I decided to leave business and go to track and field, it wasn't just that I was representing Canada, man. I can't imagine like messing up and then calling my mom and dad, because those were the ones really that was, I mean, like if they were both alive, I'd be still scared, not scared.
Yeah.
But if they're both alive today, I still have the same respect that I have, just because, again, a cultural thing, which is I try to bring into the book and kind of show how many of us, like from all over the place, because I've tons of friends from Asia and Eastern Europe and all over the place, and they're like, yeah, that was my dad too.
Yeah.
That was my mom. Yeah.
Yeah. So with your dad, it comes up a few different times, like in the book, right up until the end. But it was more so like he would tell you the plan and you just follow through on the plan. Not because he didn't love you, like it was because he loved you. That was just the way it went down, right?
Right. But as a father now, as a father now, and we have to communicate with our children. It is different. I didn't grow up that way. I mean, obviously, I'm aging myself, and there might be a few of you guys, people out there that are of my lineage. I took directions, and for me, I still think as a parent now, kids need direction. I just think that maybe now we have to communicate with them more, as opposed to when I was younger. It was a dictatorship.
You know what I found interesting is I think the name that comes up the most in the book, and this those of you who are big fans will not be overly surprised, but I was actually, because I knew all about this person, I thought, but I think the name that comes up the most in the book, besides family or Muhammad Ali, which we will get to later, is Dan, everyone. Dan, Coach Dan, okay? And so I wondered about this because I'm like, okay, clearly, so you had a real life going, the business side of things, like you were dialed, things were good.
Things were pretty good.
Right.
Yeah.
So you made a conscious decision to say, all right, and imagine everyone being, imagine having the title of, like, end up pursuing the title of fastest man in the world as your side hustle. No one's ever done anything like that. It's so wild. But so, okay, you have the confidence, right? And all these attributes that you need. But I found it interesting how because you weren't like part of the system, the Canadian system, and growing up, going from this coach to this coach,
Right.
but the bond you formed and the trust you put in Dan, where you knew that this is how I'm going to achieve all my goals.
Yeah.
How I find it mind blowing that of all the people in the world, it ends up being you and Dan, and that connection is made and history was made.
I'll tell you what, from the very first day I met Dan, he just didn't, I'm gonna say just didn't care, but I'm gonna qualify that. He wasn't impressed by athletes. He wasn't impressed by, I mean, he had coached many athletes in his life. And so what I found comfort in was that he was challenging me every day. If there was a workout, you know, he would challenge me to it. Getting my life together, like just structure, he would challenge me to that. My diet, just discipline alone, whatever my goal setting was. And it didn't matter to him. Like, it just kind of like, well, if you want to show up to practice, it's going to be 10 o'clock tomorrow, so see you. And so that was left up to me. So the entire ownership and responsibility was left up to me. And then when I got to training, like I had his undivided attention, and he was so detailed into the things that I was doing. And also at the end, it's like, at the end of practice, it goes, you can be the greatest. You know that, right? And I'm like, come on. You know?
That's so neat.
Right. So, but he challenged every day, and I also challenged him too. And so we had this unique ability to have this coach-athlete relationship where I could challenge him to something, and if he didn't have an answer for me, the next, like, he would call his network of coaches around the globe, or he was an avid reader, so he could quote things that I didn't even know these books existed. But he would have an answer for me the next day. And those are the things for me that always kept me coming back.
That's so cool. So Dan gets mentioned. Dan gets a lot of action in everyone in the book, as does Muhammad Ali. And so you always spoke your truth, right? You always spoke your truth, always. And
maybe not now. I'm old now.
And would point out things in Canada on the subject of race or bias. Right. And so a lot of people want to speak out about something that a wrong that they want righted. They would like to speak out on an issue that means a lot to them. But what they are ill prepared to do is live with that. Right? And you seemed born for it.
You know what, when I took over, we'll say, from when I was the #1 sprinter in the world and the global ambassador for our sport, we're coming off the heels of Ben Johnson. And so there's a lot of things that had happened in Canada that my father now would sit and talk about, and we cover in the book. We sit and talk about how he was treated in the media. I mean, did he do wrong? Yes. Was he guilty? Yes. All of those things were proven. But we're looking at, you know, some of the unwritten rules and some of the biases that he was facing. Now, when I was in Atlanta, I was asked a question, for instance, about the whole racism in Canada thing. Again, way before George Floyd, where we're sitting in a room like this, where we can sit down and have a conversation. And realistically, in Atlanta, when I was asked the question by Michael Farber from Sports Illustrated, the question was, you know, does racism exist? I'm like, of course it exists. I mean, like to me, it's the dumbest thing for me to say would be to lie, right? I left Oakville, which resembled like this room, moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana to train. You know, so I mean, we're obviously, you know, things were a little different, we'll say, from Oakville to Baton Rouge. But at that time in 1996, when I even discussed or took on this conversation, it was just to have a conversation. I personally want to have a conversation with our heads of sport here, to let them know, here are the things that were going on that I have to deal with, although I'm not responsible for any of these things. Also, I am from an upper middle class community. So clearly, some of the situations that I hear my teammates have gone through, I think that you guys need to deal with that, right? I didn't. I mean, you know, the policemen in my neighborhood in Oakville, if we're playing basketball outside, those guys pull up and come play basketball with us. I mean, so I'm just saying to you there, and I wanted to have the conversation that there are certain people in certain communities that are scared of people and scared of things, right? I didn't grow up that way, but I had the platform.
Yeah.
So my job and responsibility was to actually bring it to their attention. But oh no, I was a bad guy and I was a disruptor. I didn't shut up and run, all of those things. And for me, the responsibility of being probably the most recognized athlete and the fastest man in the world and having those titles, learning from that guy named Muhammad Ali. My job was to actually stand up and just to speak.
Yep.
I mean, and if I'm punished for that, so be it.
But it's like you went to, Donovan was at Muhammad Ali's funeral, and who was it? Bill Clinton spoke, and one of the, or wrote about Muhammad Ali, and one of the things he wrote was something to the effect of, sure, a lot of us want to say something about something, but who's willing to stand by it and live with it? And that's what you did, and I think it's awesome. And then you mentioned in there, this is something you did that I don't know at the time if you, like this says to me, more so even than the talent you knew you had, okay? The talent, the drive that you could be absolutely the fastest man on the planet. Here's the foresight, which I think is fascinating. You talk about going down to, no, this is amazing. Okay? Going down to Louisiana, right? Training. The questions of banned substances and PEDs out there.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
You were so, from day one, meticulous about, okay, who else is out here on the track? Where's my stuff? Where's my water bottle? Like, and this is before, like when you went down there, years before
Atlanta, yeah. This is 2 years before Atlanta.
It's unbelievable.
But that's okay. That sounds like I'm crazy, and it actually sounds.
I disagree. I think it's sounds
okay,
brilliant.
I'm a little OCD now, but yes, I'm just. It is an extremely hard life though. If you're in sport, especially my sport, you're living it, breathing it. You have to know every massage therapist that's ever given you a massage. You have to know exactly what lotion that they have. Every piece of molecule of food that you put in your mouth, you got to know where it came from. It's tough. Like I'm just saying to you that you have to live it. So yeah, it does. Maybe I'm a little. Maybe.
I don't know, but at the time you were like, right, because there wouldn't have been many outside of your little circle that were like, oh, this Donovan Bailey's going to be the fastest man of all time. But you were thinking that far down the road, that's like, I got to lock this all down now. Who, like, honestly, he's like, okay, who are these other people at the track? Where's my stuff? I think it's amazing.
But I'll tell you this, I'm representing a whole lot of people. Culture, Canada had just gotten a massive black eye.
Yeah.
Right? And so if I'm going to embrace the responsibility, I've got to be that crazy guy from day one, right? And I don't know whether or not I was going to be number 8 in the world. I didn't know I was going to be the fastest man in the world. I mean, I knew, you know what I mean? But I'm saying to you meticulously, I'm like, you know, I've never read a story where an athlete took drugs and they said, oh man, you know, I don't know how that got there, right? And the issue for me is, at no point in my life was I ever going to put myself in that situation where I was going to answer that question.
Yeah.
You know, so again, in being proactive, where I go to the track and my bag's somewhere and my bottle is somewhere, or even if we go out and I order something, I'm going to eat it and I'm not going to move until it's done, even to go to the bathroom. You know, so yeah, those things were, yeah. So when I was writing and looking and remembering those things, I'm like, oh, you're nuts, man. This is crazy.
No, I think it's brilliant. I love it so much. There's a, how how long does this feel now in 2023?
Oh
Okay?
God, what are you gonna do?
No.
What are you gonna do?
I don't mean long ago. I mean the actual pause. Okay, so and also I don't know if you know the ending of this clip. So we were talking backstage or in the room where Donovan was signing, but just how stoked I was that you included R.I.P. Don Whitman from Winnipeg. The first Saturday of Atlanta was the world record. The second Saturday was the absolute clinic by the relay team. And right at the end, Don Whitman says, "Oh, if you're Canadian, you have to love Saturday nights in Georgia." I've watched it a million times, might cry. I'm not even kidding. That's how much I love that. And he includes it in the book, and that's amazing. But if you rewind to the Saturday before, okay, how long does this, because this to me, I'm not racing and it feels like forever, okay? But like this, after the two false starts. Three. Oh my God.
That's why we changed.
Okay.
That's why the rules are changed actually from Atlanta.
So what is going through your head? Because listen, you can almost tell Don Whitman's holding back a bit. A, because he wants to see if this thing's actually going to keep going, okay? Right. But also B, because he can see that you haven't exactly come flying out of the gate.
Sixth place.
Okay.
Sixth, yeah.
So what, in this elapsed time, what's going through your head right here? Ready? This time they do get away. He doesn't say anything for like over a second. And so in that moment, because it's like, I mean, that's over a second. That's forever. That's a lifetime in 100 meters.
Well, are you asking me what's in my head now or what was in my head then?
I don't know. That's actually, it's probably hilarious now, but at the time, probably not so much.
You know what? Again, Dan was so meticulous in our preparation going into Atlanta. So so what had happened, and I covered in the book, throughout the year, you know, people kept testing me. I mean, Frankie tested me and Linford tested me, and they knew that they had to get a flyer. And they knew that number one, anytime I get the top speed, I'll gap everybody and I'll pass them. And so I'd gotten an injury just before Atlanta. And so we knew going into Atlanta, Dan's like, oh, they're gonna try and get out on you, dude. They're gonna try and get out on you. And I know that Linford's gonna try and get out on you. Otto, Bolden, and Frankie Fredericks are absolutely gonna try and get out on you. So, but you gotta be patient.
Yeah.
You gotta let it come to you.
Yeah.
Don't panic. And I also was nursing an injury. So it's like, yeah, you're gonna be all right. So the pause that you hear, the great Don Whitman, people. And by the way, I miss him too. I mean, like the greatest, one of the greatest to ever do it, ever. The pause really was just maybe just to gather, because you do have 1/1000th of 1 second to screw up and adjust and continue. So that was that. I mean, I knew that I had a horrible start, and I could panic, and I don't know if we'd be sitting here talking about out of one. I don't know about the world record, but yeah, my responsibility was just not to panic and to kind of just go get it.
Yeah, because you go through scenarios, right?
Everything.
Like they would, what if this happens? What if this? Like I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
But then in that moment to be able, because the lights were never brighter, right? Like not only was that in America, but it's also like basically same time zone as here. You know the eyeballs that are on it, right? And so to be able to process all of that in that 1 second moment, I find fascinating.
You know,
and not have the shoulders go up around, right?
No, didn't get, well, I did get tight a little bit because I knew I wanted like 65 meters and I was trying not to panic. But I gotta tell you, it's like, I retired in 2001 in Edmonton. So Atlanta to me was the home Olympics. It's the closest you could get to home. You know, so being on the track and you're looking around going, man, look at all the Canadian flags. I mean, and then Canadian flags, and it wasn't just, again, I'm representing Canada, well, it wasn't just representing Canada. It was kind of like the world against America.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I was representing the world. So there's a whole lot of people that were saying, go get them, go get them. And it was in their house. But I gotta tell you, in Atlanta, there were so many Canadian flags. It really felt like home.
So cool. The story, like you coming at this whole thing as sort of an outsider, as in
Outlier,
yeah, as in like, okay, here's the kids that grew up in sort of the Canadian system or whatever, and they went from this to this to this to this, and you did not do any of that. And do you feel like, did you know at the time, because I feel that put you at a massive, massive advantage, as in, I've got a plan and I trust my plan. And if I go with the status quo, right, which is, okay, I'll just try and fit into your system however you want me to, I don't know if we'd be telling the same story.
So yes and no. I think that there was definitely a lot of advantages for being an outlier because I hadn't bought into a system. The reason why I hadn't bought into a system was that system produced Ben Johnson. And I saw everything that they did with him. And so I came in and I'm running this as my business. Now I am Donovan Bailey running Bailey Global. And here's how this is gonna work for me. So clearly there's certainly some pushback. I mean, we cover a lot, and a lot of the lack of support that I got was from those people. But I also got to manage my own company. And Dan Paff is my coach. Mark Lindsay was my medical staff. Mark did everything, my nutritionist, acupuncturist, massage therapist, you know, whatever, right? And so we had it appeared that we had, I don't know, 50 people on staff, but it was just 3 of us, and also was training away in America. But yeah, you know what? For me, it was, so I'm saying to you that it's probably, you know, 6 or something and half a dozen of another.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because I think that the advantages I got was I saw what it is that they did, and I wanted nothing to do with those people.
Yeah.
I mean, and because again, I didn't know what they were doing, you know, behind the scenes. I didn't know what they know, or didn't know if they contributed, but I'm like, no. I owe Daisy and George, my mom and dad.
You got it.
Number one. I mean, and I know, I mean, if there's people from the Caribbean here, then you know that you can't go home and disappoint mom and dad because that stuff's gonna happen, right? And so that's number, and it's not just Caribbean parents. I mean, obviously, I think there's a lot of Canadians kind of feel this way. That's where I talk about we have more similarities than we have differences. But yeah, you know what? The number one thing for me was to just control where I was going, and I trust Dan and Mark implicitly. And so if I trust those guys implicitly, it simply means that, you know, I had some confidence that I was going to get some things done, and these guys were there. They were preparing me and supporting me every single day. So I knew things were going to happen, and I just wanted to keep things tight.
I love it. You still dunk?
No, man, I'm 55 years old. I can.
I think you can.
No, I can.
Yeah.
No, I can.
Do you remember?
I play basketball still. So I mean, yeah, I play basketball every Monday night. That's how I kind of keep one app now. I only have one.
Here's how I watched and consumed every bit of Donovan Bailey information and news I could. And so y'all remember the big, the 150 meters, right? Like, which is all covered. And if y'all want to ask a question on that, by all means, there's so much in there. But I don't know if y'all remember this. I don't even know if you know it was on TV, but because at the time I was like, I'm like the self-proclaimed, of course, and I'm sure I compete with lots of others, but I was the biggest Donovan Bailey fan, period. I thought on the planet, okay? So, and I don't even know if you remember this or if you even saw it. So I also loved basketball, like loved. So I'm like, this is my guy. Guy loves basketball. I love sprinting. This is so sick. And so, and I'm like, okay, is it possible to even like you more? They do a shot. Have you ever seen this? a shot in your dressing room before you went out for that 150?
I think I know where you're going with
Do you? And so I'm watching this on TV, and they go, okay, we're gonna go live now, and there's a shot at Donovan Bailey warming up in his room, and Donovan is doing, do you remember this? You were like,
dribbling.
Yeah.
Yep, and yep. It was, yes, I do.
And I'm like, oh my
That's
gosh, he's about to challenge this dude. Everyone's watching, and he's in his dressing room going over dunks, and I'm like, I love this man. It was so awesome. Do you remember that?
you know what, again, in writing the book, you forget about things that you forget about, right? And I work with CBC, so they'd send me a bunch of clips from behind the scenes. I'm like, man.
No way.
So yeah, so they had me like dribbling and double pumping, and this is minutes before we go outside.
It was right before you went out. I
Right.
remember just my eyes were so wide. I'm like, oh, it's not even possible for me to like you more. And now you're pretending to dunk.
Yeah.
It's so sick.
If there was a rim there, I would have dunked.
Oh, it's so great.
But again, I talk about preparation again. My preparation for that 150th was better than it was for Atlanta. We knew, like Dan, it was just like Dan and Mark. It was like, oh man, you're like scary fast, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it said to me, oh, you're gonna crush him in the first 10 meters. It's over.
Yeah.
Like it's so over. So and also they think about this, because we have as Canadians sometimes we get a little laid back, right? But if we're gonna play World Junior Hockey, right? We have rabid Canadian fans that only expect goal, and we're gonna have to crush the other team like 10-0. Like imagine 50,000 people at the Sky Dome who were just salivating because I don't think they wanted to see a race. They actually wanted me to go and like break them. Like it was like, so as Canadians, you're like, oh, we're so gonna crush you, right? And you know, it's probably one of the greatest feelings ever.
Yeah, it was more heavyweight title fight than it was. Like it was awesome.
It was
So awesome. Everyone, if you have a question, we absolutely need to make sure we get to you. This is so great. I could do this for literally hours. And yes, let's start up front right here.
Donovan, while we're talking about the 150 meters there, do you think that Michael Johnson quit in that race, or what do you think? Do you think he was beat and he just?
Michael, so I'm gonna. Michael Johnson. I mean, again, I'm gonna be much respect to him. Michael Johnson is one of the best speed and power endurance athletes. So 200 meters, 400 meters, one of the greatest ever. But he had zero chance. And, you know, almost 6'2" at that point. Was about 215 pounds, probably 2.5% body fat. He's a smaller guy. He's 140 pounds. He would have been. There's no way. If Michael's one of the fastest guys in the world, he would have been a 100 meter like Olympic champion or world record holder. So did he get hurt? He said he got cramp. He said he had a cramp. But ultimately, maybe what he was doing was trying to match my power. I started the race on the inside. I took 3 strides and I passed him. So if you're, I mean, for those of you who are race car fans or anything that you have a race that's on a curve, if the person starts on the inside and a couple of strides in, they're beside you, that means that you're now a meter down.
It's over.
Yeah, so it's done. I know I didn't answer your question.
I think it was perfect. You took a little journey, and yeah, and everyone's happy,
Yes,
and that's good. Yeah,
Indeed.
right over here.
I think you answered the question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so you talked about confidence, and I just want to go back to '96 Atlanta. First of all, thank you. That was one of the greatest moments in Canadian history.
Here.
My brother got married that day, and I'll always remember that. And we actually stopped the
Pause the wedding.
the wedding happened.
The wedding happened,
But and they're still married.
You paused the party.
We paused the first dance and we watched.
Well,
We watched your race and we gathered around one TV and
that's so good.
yeah, it was unbelievable.
Oh,
So my question is, on 96, you talked about your injury and you talked about confidence. And I just wanted to kind of marry that a bit and maybe go back to that about how did you, with all the false starts and all the pressure of you and family and Canada and everything to peak and then to set a world record. I just wanted to kind of get to the mindset of, you know, a world-class athlete about how do you perform at that level at that moment.
Well, I understood what was at stake, and like I said, there's so much. There was a bombing. Fired my agent. The racist thing on the racist article, the article in Sports Illustrated. The false starts. But I knew that I've been working towards that moment from, we talked about the day that I started with Dan and the day that we talked about, you know, people who want to take shortcuts and take drugs and do all those things. We talked about all those things. And so being in Atlanta, I realized that's it. I have one shot. So if I was disciplined enough to Commonwealth Game champion, then world champion, and now I'm at the Olympic Games, which is the top of the top. You know, for me, it was having Dan and having Mark and them knowing that I was disciplined enough and they were also disciplined enough to stay with me, and just go out and do what I did. You know, that's really what it was. For me, it was very important to kind of just stay in the zone. Just stay in the zone and see what all is there. And obviously, after that, reflecting on it, you understand what it meant, probably for everyone watching, especially, I love to hear stories like this when people are talking about where they were or what they did or name your kid or dog or whatever it was, and how important it was. So I mean, I've been blessed and very humbled to share some incredible sporting moments with incredible fans around the world, especially Canadians.
Awesome. In this town, there were people, you wouldn't know this about this town, but one of the highest ways we can honor a sporting achievement is go to Portage-Maine and just randomly party. No, I'm serious. But there were people driving like Canada flags up the windows on Portage-Maine. It was so sick. It was amazing. That's awesome. Like iconic night. All right.
Hi, Donovan.
Hi.
Thank you for representing Canada and Jamaica. And when you speak about the flags that were in Atlanta, I was one of them because I was there.
What?
And it was.
Yes, she was only 4, but that's.
It was an amazing, I can only imagine what you felt because being there was so surreal. And I always think about that moment, about how it was such a defining moment for our country because of coming off of what you said earlier about brother. And did you ever feel like added pressure going into the Olympics, knowing that all eyes were on you? Because I felt it and I didn't even participate. So I can only imagine what you went through. And my other question is, do you still speak to Donovan, Michael Johnson?
Well, I haven't spoken to Michael in a while. I mean, we've done some work together on BBC. Michael and I were never like really close friends, but Michael got sick a couple of years ago, had a stroke, and I reached out to Michael, and he's doing incredible work at BBC, by the way. The added pressure in Atlanta, you know what? I probably didn't feel added pressure because I think that I have to remove myself from all of those things and just look at it as a race and look at it as me versus 7 other of the next greatest athletes, right? I don't think I could, I don't know if I had the same amount of pressure you did. Because I think that my level of comfort on my field of play, I feel like I was naked in my living room. I mean, that's really how it was. I'm just like, well, I've got to go do this. I've got to execute. Like, you know, I got to stay relaxed. Like I answered earlier about having a terrible start. I had a terrible start. Now I could have panicked, but I'm like, no, I'm in a race. I'm in a race, and none of these guys. It ain't your day. It's not your day. It's my day. Yeah. So the added pressure, you know, I embrace the responsibility from day one, and I think that you know, thank God I had an incredible team. I've always had again, I had my family, but I've had like lines of people where, you know, from my high school coaches, like there's my college basketball coach. There's so many people. Also in Atlanta, like you, all of my friends that I grew up with, all of my friends were in Atlanta, all of them. Plane, train, automobile, hitchhike, literally. You know, so I'm just saying to you that it was just kind of like, and they were all there going, no, we're coming to party, bro, because you're gonna crush some people. And I'm like, all right, good. So the added pressure, the added pressure was just for me to do what I was doing. And I knew that with Dan and Mark and my training partners that we had prepared as best as we humanly possibly could.
Do you think it's amazing that you and I were probably more nervous than this guy? Like I was jacked. Like I was like literally like. That's it. I'm with you. That's amazing. I can't believe you were there.
That is awesome.
That is the coolest.
Yeah, that's good.
And I was also after like 50 as well.
Wait, that's good. That was
Oh,
good.
that's awesome.
The one fit. No, listen, thanks for the support. No, not at all.
That's so
Yes.
cool. Where are we going there?
Hi, good evening. Thank you, both Ace and Donovan.
Ace is excellent, isn't he?
Oh,
Give Ace a hand.
You can run 9.8, but that's
Minutes.
so fine.
I'm just kidding. It's okay. Ace was a great athlete.
So, you know, I want to go back to something that you talked about, you know, sort of this pressure, talking about culture and country.
Right.
And as first generation West Indian Canadian, my wife and I, when we watched the Olympics in '96, we were in St. Lucia.
Right.
And even though St. Lucia wasn't running, I know Atto was running, Trinidad,
Right.
but I'm Canadian.
Right.
So that sense of pride was absolutely Canada.
Right.
But of course, you know, across the Caribbean, folks were cheering.
We have inter-island fighting.
No,
Yes.
but we're cheering for the Jamaican runner, right? So my question is, you know, this idea that we've seen sort of post-Shellyan, post-Hussein, that Caribbean athletes, track and field in particular, they don't necessarily have to leave the Caribbean,
Right.
to compete at that level. And I'm curious, just your perspective on the inside, do you see that trend in track and field? Have we peaked? Has the Caribbean peaked? Or are we seeing more of those athletes going to the UCLAs and these other countries in England and so on to be able to compete at the level that you were successful in competing at?
Big question. Thank you for that. Okay, so throughout the Caribbean, for Canadians in the room, track and field essentially is our hockey. I mean, so every single and I encourage every single Canadian to actually do track and field, because regardless of what your body type is or whatever, there's an event for you, regardless. So I'm a big supporter of every single kid to do track and field. But for the Caribbean, Usain and Shellyan has, and I guess Lane, has gotten extremely successful because of coaches who have probably gone away and come back to Jamaica to coach them. And they have won, you know, well, we're post Usain, we're definitely not post Shellyan yet. I'm a big Shellyan fan. Probably one of the greatest female sprinters ever. But there are a couple of coaches that have done extremely well. And clearly there's an infrastructure that has been supportive and allowed them to be successful. What I say to Canadians, all the kids here that are trying to get to the Olympics or get to professional track and field where you actually can earn a living. And every single person in the Caribbean is that the NCAA system is still the best grassroots training program for you, one, to get a free degree so you can do whatever the hell you want after that 4 years is done. But if you're also in that degree system and you're one of the best in track and field, like golf or tennis, you'll sign a big contract and you'll still get to get your degree. So I think that it will be bigger and better. I mean, I noticed, so I obviously I follow track and field, but you know, Ace talked about basketball. I'm a basketball junkie. I mean, I love basketball. And so what you're seeing, remember back in the day when there's only 2 or 3 athletes, and I'm talking males, in the NCAA system from Canada. Now you have 160 men alone, right, playing in the NCAA system, and you're seeing so many athletes that are in the NBA coming from Canada. So I just think that I believe that the best feeder system that can allow you to get, you know, a phenomenal degree of your choice, and also a preparation in sport. And if that sport doesn't pan out to be, you know, a professional, it's preparing you for life, you know, working somewhere, is the NCAA system.
Awesome.
Hi, Donovan. Right here.
Hi.
You know, thanks for coming to Winnipeg. This is pretty cool. I've never spoken to a legend before, so you know, this is pretty.
Thank you,
cool.
boss.
I have 2 questions for you. One, I'm a speed coach. Coach Path is like at the pinnacle of the coaching game, in my opinion.
Right.
What really separates him being a coach? Like, what does he bring to the table outside of his knowledge base that really helps to propel athletes? That's the first question. The second one is, in your prime, 9'5'8", could you have touched that?
Okay, so we're gonna go last question first. If you're a disciple of Dan, you should ask Dan that question, because I think that what Dan had said to me that my preparation for Atlanta in 1996, that he expected me to run 961. Right, so that I think that can answer your question with that. I mean, Dan just expected me to do something that nobody's ever done before, based upon my preparation. And what was your first question with Dan?
What separates him
as a coach? You know what? Yeah, I love Dan. Dan's like my second dad. I think that his ability to learn from each athlete that he coaches, not trying to completely start every single athlete that he coaches from day one. If someone has incredible abilities, then he tries to tweak that and harness that, and then add things like, obviously, you know, when I came to Dan, I had no discipline in training. There was no nutrition. I didn't think that sleep was necessary. I'm a young guy trying to get out and do young boy stuff. So sleep wasn't part of it. So like just he had the ability to communicate to me in a way that I could absorb every single thing that he said. And that's why what you do and what every coach does is so important. You know, you have the brains and minds of sensitive young people, vulnerable people, and you can drive those people to do things that's not humanly possible. So communication, understanding, and just tweaking things. And then started breaking down my actual race after, you know, he said, well, you gotta start stretching. You don't stretch, you know, you gotta start lifting weights, you gotta start doing things. So I think that his ability to communicate and customizing his philosophy to every single individual athlete. I've never seen someone coaching 10 people, and he can look at 10 different people and address them, all 10 of them individually, and look at specific things that each of those 10 people are doing wrong. You know, so I mean,
the way their left foot touches down and
everything,
just like
everything. But coaches, man, I mean, you guys, coaches and teachers are, oh man, some incredible human beings, because you guys get to you got the patience of that I don't have, you know?
These are awesome. Now, there was a race, so like you're talking about like the time thing. There was a race pre-Atlanta where you shut it down mega early. That was one of the days where no big deal. In the morning, he gets asked, "Do you want to set the world record today?" He's like, "No, not today." Which again, it's still ridiculous to think about. But there was one where you shut it down way early.
It was
And
in
it would have,
Switzerland.
right, in Switzerland, and it would have been
It
like,
would have been a world record that day too. Yeah.
like way early.
But I was playing games. Because that's what we do. That's what we do. I said, not today. Not today. Stop picking up. Not today.
Hi, I wanted to add on to his question over there. I'm an archery coach, so it doesn't really, like what you do doesn't really apply, right?
It does.
But,
You gotta stay focused, my man.
but that's why I wanted to
Right.
kind of key in on what his question was.
Right.
And kind of add to it is how did you prepare mentally for Atlanta and for
So-
150?
Oh, wow.
Because that's a lot of pressure, and how do you mentally prepare and how do you separate yourself from, I guess,
Can I ask you a question?
yes, sir.
Okay. No, in order for me to answer that question. How do you teach confidence to your athletes? Like, how do you do you wait for them to respond, or do you see them do something, then you kind of pad it? Like, how do you teach? Like, I'm just saying to that, I'm asking you this question because self-conscious is something that I learned from I'm number 4 or 5 boys in my house. So I was fighting from I was tiny, and so you have to have a sense of self and a sense of confidence. If I'm eating my dinner and my older brother wanted to take my last piece of morsel, we're gonna fight. So I'm just saying that we not violence, people, but you know, like siblings stuff. So I'm saying to you that you grow, you have a little sense of confidence then, and then of course you go from that to sports, right? You go from and my dad was always someone, and even when he talked about academics, because what I cover in the book, a lot of times that people, I mean, and we have certainly a bunch of West Indians in the room. People think that West Indians are about sports and music, but in actual fact, every single island, they always talk about academics, number one, right? And education is always number one. So back to, there was always a sense of confidence for me growing up, and this is encouraged when you're a child. I mean, my dad would say, if you're gonna study like you want an A+, and don't settle for anything different than that. And if you don't, and you made a couple of mistakes, no problem. Just do it harder or smarter the next time. So I'm just saying to that there are times when I speak to coaches and they say, how do I, like, they talk to an athlete and athlete needs to go and speak to a sports psychologist and all of that. I said, but that person, that individual person, what is it that drives them to be confident? And just like, and every day you should be, it's almost like an acupuncture needle. You should be stimulating that every single day, every day. I mean, because it allows a radio host, allows a lawyer, like it's all the same thing. What you're doing is you look at all of these little tiny things as teachable moments that at some point they're gonna use it. And if you happen to be a coach in a sport that they can use it right there, then why not? So I mean, so you didn't answer my question. How do you teach it? Right?
I think it's more, for me, is positive reinforcement.
Right. Okay.
If I see something that I like,
Right.
that they've done.
Right.
I make sure they know that
Yeah,
they've
perfect.
done something right.
Right. And also, I mean, what I encourage coaches to do also is challenge kids, man. It's when you know a kid has a drive, challenge them. I mean, sometimes, I mean, we live in a world today where communication is, you know, it's delicate. I came from a place where my coach could say, hey, stop being a blah, 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 and go do that because it's in you or you're better or whatever, right? But also my dad was saying the same thing to me. So it was, and my brothers were doing the same thing. So, it's very important. The support system is very important. And for people to have self-confidence. I think that's where it starts, self-belief.
So time is flying by, but we have time for 2 more questions. So there's one in the back and one over here. Then we'll go to some closing comments. Then I'll tell you how to get books signed. So thank you so much, everyone.
He's pretty fast.
Yeah.
Realists.
Yes.
Mennonite missile right there.
Yes, not until we're missing.
Hi, Ace. Hi, Donovan.
How you?
Very well, and yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. The weather held up for me.
I'm shocked for this time of year. I'm shocked. Donovan, what's the greatest advice that you ever received as an athlete?
Wow. If I don't put in the work, if I don't put in the work, I'm gonna get nothing. I mean, and yeah, if you don't put in the work, you're not gonna get what you want out of it. Surround yourself with the right people. You know, be disciplined. Always be around people that's gonna challenge you to be your better self. Just feel it.
Hi, Donovan. I was at the same wedding. I was mother of the group.
Nice, nice.
I was wondering where you keep all your medals and awards. And secondly, if you are going to be involved in the Paris Olympics that are coming up, and if you have anybody that we should be watching, Canadian person, female.
Oh, wow. Man. Okay, so my medals are in a safety deposit box, and I have a bunch of trophies that are sitting in my office. So that's, I shouldn't even say it that way. But yes, they're scattered all over my office. I will be in Paris. I will be, I've been with CBC since 2001. So I will certainly be there calling the sprints at least. You know, we'll see what happens with the kids there. The people that I'm thinking, the up and comers, you know what? Andre, I think, is going to come back and have a decent year. I just hope for him one day to, like, I definitely set a standard, and he certainly, he gets out there and he gives it his all. I mean, he's a small guy. But you know, I trust him implicitly. Jerome Blake, Aaron Brown, our sprint team should do well, but it is the Olympic Games, and so every single athlete around the world is planning to get the one gold medal that's available. So I don't have, like, I'm looking forward to, I mean, I know you're saying female and you're saying Canadian. I'm actually looking forward to see, like, we don't have a sprinter. We don't have a sprinter that I think that would be really, that would be challenging, like a world record or even #1. I mean, I mentioned earlier, I'm a big Shelly Ann Fraser fan. She's been one of the top athletes in the world, and an amazing spokesperson for our sport. And just a beautiful human being, and such a pleasure to watch and interview, and you know, and just an optimistic figure. It's going to be her last Olympics, so I'm looking forward to that. But I'm looking forward to also the challenges that are going to happen between, you know, some of the emerging nations from Africa. Like I'm saying, through my lens, that's where I see it. I mean, I can't look at one particular person. You know, there's a kid from Botswana that's really, really fast. A kid from Kenya. There's going to be a bunch of kids from Jamaica. The Canadians, of course, I mentioned. The U.S. We have some kids from Japan, the UK, and of course, America. It's going to have 4 or 5 people. So I'm just looking forward to the Olympics in Paris 2024. Hopefully, as one of the best ever. That we can see some incredible records and that we get to watch, and hopefully we see some moments created, kind of like what I created for you guys, so that some author could be sitting in front of you 20 years from now doing what I'm doing right now. Yes, you're very welcome.
Perfect. So if you folks have any closing comments you might like to offer, you're very welcome.
Y'all were amazing. That was that. I think I don't know if Donovan knew this, but like, people were here at like 5 o'clock to get a spot. No, it's
Thank you,
awesome,
thank you.
and
That's
and
awesome.
I think I can speak for a lot of people and most people here that like, that is, you mean so much to us, and those moments are very, very special to us, so thank you.
No, thank you.
Well, it was such a thrill to just be able to sit back and listen. Thank you both so very much for that conversation. Thank you for all your questions, for your attention, for being here. I do have some notes just about signing procedure very quickly. So again, we'll ask you all just to remain in your places for one moment. We'll get Donovan over to the table. We'll tell you to come over. And then when you do get there, we'll be writing your names on Post-it notes to put it in the books. It's not because we don't trust you to spell your name. It just means you can spend a little bit more time talking rather than spelling when you get to the table. My colleague Angela will also be directly across, so if you would like a picture, please just make sure that your phone is out, ready to go, and we'll help snap a photo of yourself and Donovan. We're so very grateful, particularly to Penguin Random House and Random House of Canada for helping to make this evening possible. Donovan would not be here if it weren't for them, and this book would not have been published,
thank
so
you.
huge thanks to them. Thank you all again for making it out on the shockingly lovely November evening.
It's me, I brought the warmth. Oh, you all brought the warmth. Yes, we're blessed.
It was a collaboration. It worked out wonderfully. The book is Undisputed, A Champion's Life. It is incredible. Get a copy of it here. We have copies at the cash desk. We have copies at the signing table. Get a book signed before you pay for it. Please do pay for the book. And I'll ask you to join me in 2 rounds of applause. The first for your host, Ace Burpee. And please give a huge, warm wave of gratitude for Donovan Bailey.